Talk Show. Recorded live.
My name is Shurtleff. I'm a field rep for the John Birch Society. I cover New England, at least 5 of the New England states, and upstate New York, and been a member of the society since 1988. Came on staff in 1990, and one of my very first action items as a new member was to stop the CON, Article 5 Convention. And it's an ongoing project that our society has been involved in since the early 80s, when we were 2 states away from an Article 5 convention. Now, there's been lots of things I've said on the subject, and my colleagues have said and written, so I'm not going to talk too much about it here, why we should stop it. Let me just make a recommendation to an excellent video on YouTube entitled The Article 5 Convention, What They're Not Telling Us, or Telling You, by Robert Brown. It's a recent presentation. Came out, I think, in probably January, early February of 2016. And if you go to the newamerican.com website and put in Article 5 Convention, you'll find a lot of great articles. But I want to discuss, one of the organizations that's promoting an Article 5 Convention is Convention of States. It's led by a man named Mark Meckler, whom I'll talk a little bit more towards the end of this short video here. But Mr. Meckler was recently created a YouTube video where he was scolding and denouncing the West Virginia House of Representatives. West Virginia had just ended their session. This would be March 12th, Saturday. And they did not take up his resolution. I guess they killed it on a voice vote. And so the video, it's entitled, Disgusting, Shocking, Unbelievable Behavior Has Masses Outraged. Well, I don't think it was so outraged. It's quite possible that they simply suspended the rules and they wanted to get the day over with and close the session. And they probably didn't think his resolution, that, by the way, his organization is extremely well-funded, and they have full-time paid staff all over the country pushing for this. But West Virginia did pass an Article 5 convention for this thing called the Balanced Budget Amendment, but they just didn't get to Mark Meckler, so he's making reference to these people as shocking and disgusting and outrageous. Well, Mark and your fellow COS people, let me give you an example of some shocking and outrageous behavior that your organization did in New Hampshire. Okay, now, a friend of mine wrote a little article, which I put here on the video, so I'm going to sort of read it and then comment as I read it. Elected officials, beware. You better support an Article 5 convention or you may be accused of bribery. And by the way, this was written by Mr. Bill McNally of Windham, New Hampshire, who is a longtime John Birch Society member and has been involved in this Article 5 opposing one since the early 80s. He also hosts a radio show at WSMN in Nashua, New Hampshire. It airs Monday mornings at 9 o'clock. Anyway, here's the article. New Hampshire, an organization founded by Mark Meckler called Convention of States, has lobbyists in state houses across the United States urging legislators to pass their resolution calling for an Article 5 convention. Their paid lobbyists and supporters have every right to promote an Article 5 convention, but they don't have a right to destroy the reputations of honorable people who oppose one. That is exactly what they did in New Hampshire. Recently, Hal Shurtleff, yours truly, New England coordinator for the John Birch Society, was contacted by a friend who shared the following email sent out by the New Hampshire Convention of States. So let me just mention that this friend of mine, was on their mailing list at Convention of States. She'd never signed up for it, but somehow was on the list, and she doesn't support one. And I haven't really known her all that long, but she said, you folks are very honorable, what I see, what you have to offer. She attended our presentation that we did at the State House in New Hampshire on Common Core, and she was very impressed. Anyway, so this is the official email that came from the Convention of States. It was on a Convention of States template. It was not on a private email. Good morning, supporters. One of the members of the New Hampshire State Senate Committee, Kevin Avard, is now opposing SCR 4. SCR 4 is the resolution calling for an Article 5 convention that's been sponsored by Convention of States. And incidentally, they tell us it's a limited convention. There's really no such thing. It can't be limited. And if you read the body of this resolution, which you can find online, SCR4, New Hampshire Senate, you'll read it and see that this is nothing limited here. This really is an open-ended. Anyway, to continue, opposing SCR4 due to a donation he recently received for his campaign by the John Birch Society, who is against us. Let me comment here that the John Birch Society never has, cannot, and never will donate money to a politician, elected official, or what have you. The Birch Society is forbidden to do that, and it's never happened. Members, may have made donations to people, but here she's saying the John Birch Society did it, and he changed his vote because of that. So in other words, he's accusing Senator Avard of bribery, accepting a bribe, and accusing us of bribery. Senator Avard, I'll continue, is from District 12, which includes Brookline, Greenville, Hollis, Mason, New Ipswich Range, and Wards 1, 2, and 5 in the city of Nashua. Make a call and leave a message, et cetera, et cetera. And it's signed Priscilla Mills, Grassroots Coordinator, Convention of States Project. Senator Kevin Avard was informed of this outrageous slander and accusation of bribery and contacted Ms. Mills by email, only to receive an arrogant reply to the effect that if he doesn't like it, he shouldn't be in politics. Senator Avard then contacted the New Hampshire Director of Convention of States, and he went into damage control mode and issued this weak apology. So this apology, I'll put that in quotation marks, came out within the next day. On behalf of Convention of States Action, New Hampshire, I would like to publicly apologize to Senator Avard for the email message that was sent yesterday by our former volunteer grassroots coordinator, Priscilla Mills. The information in the message was inaccurate, and I am truly sorry that it was sent. Please disregard it in its entirety. I believe that Senator Avard continues to seriously consider both sides of SCR4. Yes, isn't it nice that they acknowledge that there is another side to it, and maybe they should consider it. And to continue, and I hope that this recent error in judgment by one of our former volunteers will not prevent him from focusing his attention on the critical substance of this issue for our nation. For the foreseeable future, I will be the only volunteer sending out communications on behalf of COS Action New Hampshire, and I will ensure that no further incorrect information is disseminated. I sincerely hope that Senator Avard will forgive us and will not hold this error in judgment made by one volunteer against our entire statewide or national movement. Sincerely, John Thorold, New Hampshire State Director. Mr. Thorold called Ms. Mills' smear inaccurate information and her deed simply an error of judgment. Hal Shurtleff disagreed. It was not inaccurate information. It was a bold-faced lie, Shurtleff said. An error of judgment? ? No, it was a hateful attempt to destroy the reputation of an honorable elected official and the good men and women who make up the John Birch Society. Readers should note that no apology was forthcoming to members of the John Birch Society. Mr. Shurtleff wanted to make it clear that the sponsor of the resolution calling for an Article 5 convention, Senator Gary Daniels of Milford, New Hampshire, is an honorable man who has nothing to do with this ugly tactic. Please note that if it wasn't for Mr. Shurtleff's friend, this lie would not have been uncovered. It begs the question, how many emails of this nature went out to Convention of States supporters that were not detected? Convention of States has enjoyed the support of many good Americans who are well-meaning. Let us hope that they will do a little research into this group that is only a few years old. May I suggest a visit to the website for starters? And the website is livingroomconversations.org, and it's signed Bill McNally. And by the way, this story was originally in the New Hampshire Tea Party Coalition.org, which you can also find on Facebook, New Hampshire Tea Party Coalition.org. This is where the original article ran. Now, Mark Meckler is the founder of this organization, and he calls himself a conservative. He calls himself a constitutionalist. I have an email that I received from him where he is calling for changing the rules without changing the players or the politicians. One of his field reps now covering the Northeast, Ken Quinn, I have a screenshot on Facebook saying that the Constitution is the problem and that they need to have structural change. And he's saying that if the Constitution can be disobeyed, then it's a problem. And that's just like that same logic could say, well, that people disobey the Ten Commandments, so I suppose we can amend those and change those as well. So, but this, for those of you who are, gee, I like the idea, Congress isn't a problem and so forth and so on, and maybe we really ought to do something, and maybe this is the way to go. Look at the man who runs Convention of States. Go to Living Room Conversations, and I'm actually posting a picture here, a picture of him, a comment he made. If you go to Living Room Conversations, you will see a picture of Van Jones, and both Van Jones and Mr. Mark Meckler are champions of this very liberal organization called Living Room Conversations. And if you know anything about the Delphi technique, you'll see how this group employs that to promote their liberal agenda, the idea of getting Biden into consensus. So Mark Meckler, and you can read the comment, and I think it's still on their website if they haven't scrubbed it yet, but he's saying, and I'm paraphrasing, that the elites control both Washington, D.C. and state capitals. Now, isn't that interesting? The man that is now telling us that we have to have, the states have to get back their power, and the only way to do that is to have an Article 5 convention and have delegates from the states to sit down and propose amendments or what have you. But he just said that the states are run by elites. So what he's saying is basically we need the elites that run D.C. and the state capitals to give us some new amendments. I mean, a little logic here. Say, well, boy, Mark, if the elites run the state houses and they run D.C., we don't have much hope here, do we? Why would you want to have the elites have a convention? What's going to come out of that? You're going to come out with limited government under the Constitution. You're going to come out with some amendments that will force these big government types under control. What's a little more disturbing is you'll see a couple of videos. One of the videos shows a video with Mark Meckler and Van Jones. Now, they're not interviewed together, but they're both endorsing it. And then you'll see Mark Meckler sitting down with Joanne Blades of MoveOn.org. This is a Soros-funded entity. Now, what does this man who calls himself a constitutionalist and a liberty-minded person have anything in common with someone like Joanne Blades? And, I mean, are we to assume that he's just that naive that he thinks that we can have common ground and work together with an organization that's diametrically opposed to liberty and limited government? Or could it be something else? No, that's for you to decide, folks. And also, I didn't post it, but there is a video out there. Mr. Meckler was in New York City, and he was arrested for trying to put a handgun. He was checking it in, and he didn't know the law in the state, and that's a legitimate thing. And even though he's a lawyer, he's not a criminal lawyer, so he probably didn't know all the laws, and he got arrested. But this is the problem: he's arraigned in a courthouse. And after he's arraigned, he runs from the media. I have to say, he's a pretty fast guy, pretty athletic. He hopped over a fence. Now, here's a responsible leader of the Tea Party movement prior to becoming the head of this Convention of States. Shouldn't he have stood his ground and made a clear defense of the right to keep and bear arms? Well, that's the type of leader you have, folks. So I would seriously look into this man. And I seriously hope that if you're interested in preserving our Constitution, that you get involved with people that are trying to stop an Article 5 convention. You can do that by contacting me. I'll have some at the end of the video. There'll be my phone number and an email. On Facebook, Stop the Constitutional Convention. It's some great updated material there, and we'll get started. We have 28 states now that have passed an Article 5 resolution, and some of these calls may not be valid or may not be acknowledged, but we have to act like we're 6 states away. So we can use your help. Thank you for watching, and God bless America.